Good evening, everybody. My name is Ramses Madhu. I'm the Division Manager of Planning, Policy, and Sustainability in the Department of Transportation here in the city of San Jose. And I'm very excited to come talk to you about the Move San Jose plan, formerly called the Access and Mobility Plan. This plan is the citywide transportation plan that we are looking to bring to council soon after we get further feedback from the public. Before we get into presentations, I want to make sure that all of our resources are, folks are aware of our resources. We have an ASL interpreter, as you can see up there on the screen. Live closed captioning is also available to use it. There is a live transcript button at the bottom of the screen. Please click on that and the text will start showing at the bottom of the screen. We also have a copy of the presentation we'll be showing with descriptive text for all of the images we're using. Corinne, I believe you're going to drop a link to that in the chat right now. With those important messages sent out, we're going to dive in. So I've introduced myself. I'm going to introduce some of the team here that has been working on this plan and will be speaking with us tonight. We have Wilson Tam from the Department of Transportation. He's our planning manager. We have Natasha Upfeld, also from the San Jose city team, and she manages our multimodal transportation improvement plans. We also have Joe Kaler from ARIP, our consultant team. He has been doing a lot of work on this plan. We're very excited to have him here. And we also have Adam Berger here from VTA, our Valley Transportation Authority Transit Agency, who's going to say a couple words. Are you able to unmute, Adam? No. All right. Avery, are you able to give Adam unmute abilities? He's probably not a panelist. There we go.
Okay, there we go. Hi, everyone, and thank you for coming to the open house. Adam Berger. I'm a senior transportation planner with the Valley Transportation Authority, and I've been the staff liaison to this project for a little while. And like a lot of other work that the city of San Jose is doing right now, this is impressively progressive when it comes to investing in the transit system. This work lays out a vision for how transit can be better and a number of policy changes that'll help us get there. So I'm looking forward to your feedback on that tonight. And I'll pass it back to Ramses.
Great, thanks, Adam. As part of the work for this plan, we've been very fortunate to be able to work with some community-based organizations who have been helping us craft the content of this plan, making sure that we're hearing from folks that we in city government traditionally don't hear from. And so we're very excited to bring them on. Can you bring our CBO partners up into the spotlight here? We're going to have each one say a word. Oh, I jumped a slide, didn't I? Well, let's do that first anyways. I'll do the agenda afterwards. So why don't we, yeah, go ahead. Why don't we start with Christine?
Hello, my name is Christine Fitzgerald, Community Advocate for the Silicon Valley Independent Living Center. SCILC is very dedicated and committed to working with people with disabilities, with all different kinds of disabilities, to improve their quality of life and independence in a variety of ways. And this is just one of those ways. Back to you.
Thank you. Omar.
Hi, my name is Omar Vasquez. I'm part of the executive board of Luna. Luna is a community organization working for Latinos. Also here, he's supposed to be speaking here is Tony Romero, who's a Romero Hill, the organizer who helped us, especially in the transportation wing of Luna. Thank you.
Lisa. Oh, we can't hear you. Nope, not coming through.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Oh, great. Thank you, Omar. Yeah, I'm Tony Romero. I'm a community organizer with Luna, Latinos United for New America. And we've been working with Ramses and some of the staff at the Department of Transportation, building the bridge between the community, the Latino community, and the city in order to bring more of our voices to the planning to these projects that the city wants to implement. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Tony. And then Lisa, you want to try again? We weren't able to hear you before.
Does it work now?
Yes.
All right. Hello, my name is Alyssa. I am here with Vivo Vietnamese Voluntary Foundation. We're a nonprofit organization working mostly to cater to the Vietnamese community, but we are opening to helping everyone else as well. The main point of today for Vivo's side is we're very happy to work with Move, since we think Move is an amazing program that's coming up and that the team here can help the community in many different ways. So we're happy to help and we're happy to be here.
Thank you so much, everybody. It's been really helped the plan along with all the input we've gotten from folks. Can we make sure we get the slide deck link into the chat window? We're getting a question on that. All right, can we go back one slide? I jumped over the agenda slide. Just a quick touch on what we're going to be doing tonight. We've done our introductions. We are going to be doing a couple polls throughout, just to get folks' kind of brains going on the content we'll be talking about. We're going to be talking a little bit about the community profiles and outreach we've been doing to really highlight some of the transportation concerns, which we know there's a lot, and hopes out there. And then we'll be providing an overview, of course, of the plan itself, along with the potential strategies that the plan is proposing to take on. After the explanation of the plan, we'll be doing another poll, and then we're going to get into the kind of technical detail. Now, this is, of course, the third round of outreach for this effort. And so we've done a lot of development. And so the heart of this presentation really will be around the technical development and analysis that have led us to the proposals that we're going to be working on. Do stick around till the end. We will be giving out a $100 Target gift card to one lucky first person there at the end. Yeah, and with that, I am going to pass it off to Wilson to do our first Zoom poll.
Great. Can you hear me? Yes. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ramses. And we would like to have a little ice-breaking session with you all right now. And there are two Zoom poll questions that we are going to engage with you during the course of the presentation. First, with this ice-breaking question that we would like to ask you about. And this question is really about asking us to help us understand your thoughts about transportation in general in the city of San Jose. And to participate in these poll questions, just wait for these options to display on your screen. If you happen to not be able to see the poll window that should have pulled out on your screen, please use the link the link provided in the chat to download the presentation, and you'll have access to the options provided by these questions. And feel free, if you're not able to participate in these poll questions through the live interactive way, feel free to also put in or type in your response in the chat windows, and we will be able to keep track of all your responses. And sorry about the technological issues, if there are any. The first questions that we are really wanting to ask you, right, is this: what do you believe are the top transportation issues that you think are impacting San Jose? And you should see 6 choices for you to respond to. And you can select as many choices that you would like here. And let me quickly read this out loud, and feel free to respond to this right now. These choices are cost of travel, including the gas, fare price, traffic congestion, lack of multimodal facilities such as trails, bike lanes, sidewalks, public transit schedule, sidewalk, road, bike lanes, maintenance issues, and last but not least, the traffic speeds and lack of safety regarding bike users, pedestrian, scooter users, and people in wheelchairs. Feel free to respond to this, and I'll wait for everyone to finish, and I will read off any responses in the chat, and we will also show a poll results after roughly 30 seconds or so. Let's give folks another 10 seconds or so, and we are very excited to see some of the results you guys provided. Great, why don't we see some interesting result? Okay, so we are seeing that almost half of the responses refer to public transit schedules being one of the most important transportation issues that is impacting San Jose right now. We also see a lot of responses surrounding the cost of travel. The gas price is high, the transit fares are high. We understand that. Traffic congestion, 36%. And I would say it's kind of evenly distributed if you can kind of see, right? Like we have responses in each of the 6 options here. And with transit, lack of multimodal, facilities throughout the city. Interesting. Thank you for your response here, and I hope like this kind of like gives us some space to think about as we are going through the presentation, that we are really trying to address these issues in this citywide transportation plan. With that, next slide. Now we are going to introduce to you one of the ways that we have tried to integrate the 1 million population or residents that the city is serving in this citywide transportation planning process. To really, in order for us to really understand how people are getting around and what we can do to really improve the travel experience, we are very fortunate to be able to interview 9 people to really like focus on, how, like, what is their transportation issues that they're facing today. We are also very fortunate to be able to join them in doing their commute and their travel trips throughout the day to better understand their concerns, their issues, so that we can kind of frame these issues into our planning process. So we these 9 people, we call them like personas, and basically we are trying to formulate community profiles based on these people that we interviewed with. And these 9 people, interestingly, have unique transportation demands and needs. And highlighting on this screen are 2 people that we are very happy to interview and join their commute on. Lam is a gentleman, 71 years old, and he uses buses to really meet all their transportation needs, including getting around, grocery stores and going to his doctor appointment. Ryan is a 29-year-old, and he and his partner drives, but also take public transportation whenever they can. And including, for example, Ryan also takes, ride a bike and take on a Caltrain to go to his workplace in Sunnyvale. So our goal is really about understanding the unique transportation demands and needs, and really be able to articulate a plan that can actually serve all communities. And throughout this presentation, we will refer back to these 9 personas to create tangible connections between the challenges that the communities have and what we can do in this citywide plan to address these challenges and improve the transportation options for everyone. So with that, I'm happy to pass it on to Ramses to talk about what is Move San Jose.
Great. Yeah, what is Move San Jose? What is this plan? What are we trying to do with this? Yeah, let's dive into it. Next slide, please. So Move San Jose represents a new approach for the city of San Jose to how it's going to manage and prioritize transportation projects. It's building on what's already planned and giving us a better structure for choosing what we should be doing next. The important parts that we've been bringing in here are, one, really using a data-driven decision-making process that brings in a deep look at what is happening in the city transportation-wise and how that relates to the city's goals, and using a newly built model that helps us really think about these things in a deeper way. And we've also making sure we're integrating a deeper sense of listening, integration with community feedback as we make these decisions. This plan builds on and in a lot of ways implements the larger vision the city has already adopted. The city, of course, has its general plan called the Vision San Jose. It also has a climate action plan that really are the guiding lights for where this plan is trying to go. What differentiates this plan from other planning efforts is, of course, like I just noted, the data-driven approach to decision making that we're bringing here. Deeper engagement with the public and making these decisions, as well as being an umbrella plan, right? So the outcome of this plan is really trying to help steer where the resources of the city are going in transportation from a holistic perspective. This plan is for everyone, and we're going to be talking a lot about strategies that improve transit, that really focus on pedestrian, folks who are walking, folks who are in wheelchairs, folks who are on bikes. But this plan also is for those who are driving, and we're making sure this is really about how do people get around the city and how can we help everyone get around better. Next slide, please. Earlier in this plan's development, we worked a lot with community members, our community-based organization, as well as through a lot of workshops on really refining what are San Jose's transportation goals. We started by taking all of the already adopted city policies and goals that relate to transportation. And then we had a lot of conversations about what is important around transportation for people, what's really going to help people's lives. Now, we came up with these 9 goals. We won't talk about all of them. There's a lot here, and we've presented and discussed these in depth in earlier presentations and workshops. But I will highlight 3 here. One is access for all. We know that transportation plays a huge part in people's ability to afford where they live, get access to everything from jobs, seeing their friends, education, doctor's offices, and everything. We also know that transportation resources historically not gone to underserved communities and have not gone to folks who have limited mobility for various reasons. So we're really focusing on that. Another one is clean the air, right? Transportation accounts for more than 50% of all greenhouse gas emissions in San Jose. And so this is a huge driver of this plan, is how do we reduce that environmental impact? And lastly, transportation safety. As we all know, it can be dangerous on the roadway. There are many deaths on the roadway every year, and addressing that both is a moral kind of focus of all work in transportation, but also is very important to getting folks to ride their bike more and walk more, or feel comfortable using their wheelchairs or other mobility devices around the city. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Natasha to talk about the approach we took to developing this plan.
Hi, everybody. I'm here to, oh, can you hear me? Good. I'm here to talk about the path we traveled, I guess no pun intended with that one, to get this planning process started and to get where we're at today. Next slide, please. So it has taken a long time to kind of get where we are because of the intense data analysis and community outreach that went into creating this plan. On the right-hand side, we kind of have this winding path that goes through our process, and I'll go through it really quick. The first step, as Ramsey was saying, was really defining our goals and not just setting these, like big statements of intention, but breaking down exactly how we are going to reach them. What are some key data points that will mean, what success is or what failure is? So tracking our progress was super important. Secondly, we developed a list of potential strategies together with our community partners, our surveys, our technical advisors. We looked at, global best practice and developed a list of over, 150 different ways people are moving the needle in transportation. Then we knew we couldn't go to the community with, that many strategies. So we refined them to see what exactly was going to work best for San Jose. We know that San Jose is super context specific. So we wanted to be really effective in how we were able to achieve them. Then we calculated community-based metrics. So like I said, San Jose is a very special city. And even within San Jose, we have very unique communities with very specific needs. So we made sure to use really kind of modern and breaking, like boundary breaking data sets that we are able to really zone in on a block by block basis almost and evaluate what is going to move the needle. Then we estimated the outcome that our strategies would have by running those, data points that I mentioned. We have what we call a decision support system that we created as part of this plan, which is a fancy way of saying a program that can help us look at different data points around the city and see what projects we're doing affect certain numbers and data points. And then finally, we package the recommendations based on that data analysis, based on the community outreach, based on which strategies people liked more and liked less, and are proposing it today. Next slide, please. We've mentioned community feedback and community outreach so much in this presentation, but we really wanted to highlight it one more time to bring the point home that really deep community outreach has been done on this plan. And it goes without saying that the last 2 years, it's been really, really difficult to do our traditional methods. But I just want to thank the whole team that's been working on this and all of our community partners and people that brought us into their neighborhood association Zoom meetings, our Viva Parks movie night events, and anywhere that would have us, we were coming out to try to talk to this plan. We reached almost 1,500 people around San Jose. We did 5 online large workshops such as this. We offered them in different languages. Then we did 12 in-depth focus groups with, trying to get all sorts of people from the community, low-income folks, folks of different nationalities and cultures, people with disabilities, and bringing in to really dive deeper into some of the details of this plan. We developed a full website to explain all the things this plan was proposing that had almost 5,000 unique page views. We also launched a survey, kind of like the Zoom poll you saw today, that had a bunch of different questions about people's perceptions of transportation and what they wanted to see done better. And we have almost 900 responses on that. And then we did 23 hyper local community presentations. These were pop-ups with a table at farmers markets, Zoom neighborhood association meetings, and different events like that to really get into the community. And those were done in different languages, different times on weekends and stuff. Next slide, please. Through all of that outreach, we heard a lot, but some key takeaways that we really made sure were enveloped in this plan were the following. One, that any options we propose are timely, reliable, safe, and affordable. We need to make sure that people can count on what we're proposing and do it in a safe way. Also, we want to incentivize transportation and incentivize ways of trying different modes. Some people have only driven their whole time in San Jose or walked. How can we get people to try new things? We want to be able to incorporate ADA requirements across the board and use accessibility best practices such as universal design to not only meet the minimums, but make the experience as great as possible for people with disabilities. We also, in the ways we can as DOT, address the housing crisis and support unhoused San Joseans. And then, of course, we need to consider the needs and perspectives of households in equity-focused areas. Again, there's not a one-size-fits-all solution, and sometimes thinking of people that have been underserved and the people that need the most gets us the best outcomes. Next slide.
Natasha transitions to the next slide. I'm just going to say one thing, which is there's a lot of people who have already found the chat. We say, if you have anything that's come to mind, questions you have, please put them in the chat. We're very happy to engage with you there. And we'll be doing a question and answer session at the end of the presentation. I forgot to mention that at the beginning. Sorry about that, Natasha and Wilson.
Thank you, Natasha and Ramses. I am our poll guy for tonight. So that means that there will be another poll question coming up. As Natasha said, we have gone through a very robust community-based process to really understand like what are the concerns or needs of the communities. And after talking with more than 1,500 residents through community meetings and surveys, we are able to come up with a list of strategies to present to you. So I'm going to spend the next couple of slides presenting these strategies. After I'm done with presenting these strategies, there will be a poll question to engage with you on understanding like, are these strategies making any sense to you? Should we focus more or less on any particular strategy? So yeah, so that please as we are going through these strategies, let's think about in those space and let us know what you think. So right now we are going to give you a list of potential strategies that would make us help the city reach these 9 citywide goals that Ramses was talking about earlier, and help people who live in San Jose get around. So as Natasha mentioned, we did an assessment of more than 150 strategies that would help us meet the goals. And we talked with the community, engaged with you via an online surveys, and we landed on 26 specific strategies that we could focus on. And we don't have enough space to talk about 26 strategies in tonight's meeting, but we are going to pull out 12 of the 26 strategies here on this slide. And these 12 strategies are divided into 3 buckets: streets, transit, and policies and programs. And I'm going to talk about each of these buckets in more detail in the later slides. And yeah, great, thank you. So first of all, I would like to bring out a quote that we have heard from one of the 9 personas or 9 people that we are very fortunate to be able to interview and travel with during their commute patterns. Angel is a 33-year-old, and he mentioned something like, intersections need designs to slow down traffic while allowing cyclists to have dedicated time to turn from one street to another. So in order for us to, to address these particular concerns and needs, we have really focused our strategies on trying to improve the city's ability to build and maintain public infrastructure that really improves the way people get around. These 4 strategies are just a subset of related strategies that we may not be able to show on this slide for tonight. But these 4 strategies really highlights the theme here, right? One is about safer streets, kind of relating to a very good comment brought up by Stephen in the chat box here, that we really want to create safe streets through prioritizing mobility impaired riders, reducing speed limits, and improving bus boarding areas. We would also like to propose to re-examine our streets and how we can create more open space in our public streets, right? So that we can create more outdoor dining and parklets for people to enjoy. We also are proposing to install more green infrastructure, such as like trees, plants, or stormwater drains. And last but not least, we would like to implement safe biking facility to try to slow down the streets for all street users. And so like this bucket of strategies is really about improving the physical infrastructure in the public realm to really serve the diverse needs of the street users. Next slide, please. The second bucket is about improving transit. A quote that we are able to get from RJ here, you know, if people can choose to move for free through public transportation instead of paying $5 a gallon on gas driving their cars, then we would be able to you know, address the climate change problem that we are trying to resolve here. You know, RJ brought up how a resident at Second Street Studios allowed him to receive eco passes to be able to ride on you know, BTA bus and light rail for free, as long as he remained as a resident. And even though he may not be able to ride public transit as much as he used to because of the pandemic, but he would like this kind of option so that he can choose when and how to get around San Jose based on where he would like to go to. The theme here is really about improving transit, improving our access to the transit services, and also make transit more affordable. So things such as like expanding transit services, improving the quality of the stations, and also how people can walk and bike to and from the station after they get off the buses and light rail. How can we make transit fares more affordable to people? How to redesign the transit stops in a more user-friendly way. The last bucket of strategies is involving policies and programs. And these are strategies that we would like to encourage behaviors that would help reduce the vehicle usage and greenhouse gas emissions that Ramses was talking about earlier, right? One possible example, right, includes like tapping into you know, federal and local tax credits to reduce electric vehicle costs, right? And using cities' development policies, right, for asking development contributions or development projects contribution towards funding these improvements and strategies. And overall, these programs and policies are really about trying to create the incentives, right? So that like as we are providing or improve these transportation options, people would be aware, right, that these options are actually made available to the public, and we would like to create incentives and affordability, right, so that like people can feel free to use these options provided to them at an affordable way. And so a quote brought up by Kat during our interviews are that like, you know, her car provides a reliable and timely mode of transportation, which is a top priority for her when taking care of her family. So really about like how can we make the other transportation options available and also competitive in terms of like timing, affordability, so that people can see that like besides driving their vehicles, there are actually many different ways to get around San Jose. So these are the policies that we are trying to propose to do that. First is about like transit first policy, which is an effort about trying to provide more transit facilities to support buses and light rail operations on the streets, on their routes, such as providing like transit signals that can actually allow the buses to have a green light moving forward so they don't have to stop at the red light every single intersection, right? We would also have something like allowing for buses to be able to not facing traffic congestion, that they're able to ride more freely and more smoothly, so that the time the transit riders spend to travel in buses would improve significantly. So so these are the 3 buckets of strategies, right? We talked about streets, we talked about transit, we talked about policies and programs, and now this is the time for us to think about, in these 3 buckets of strategies, which one or which strategy group do you think is the most important for the city to really consider? I think the simple answer would be a combination of all 3, right? We need to do everything, right? But are there any particular, or is there any particular strategy group that you think the city should really emphasize to improve the transportation options for the city? So you will see a poll question up in the window here. And again, if you are not able to participate in this interactive poll question, feel free to put in your response in the chat window here. Or if you would like to see the options again, feel free to go to the link shared in the chat for the presentation, and you will learn more about these strategy groups in more detail there. So the 3 options provided here for you to choose is streets, transit, and the policies and programs buckets that we just talked about. So which group resonates with you the most, and you would like the city to really emphasize its importance for the future of San Jose? And I really like the comments in the chat. There's a lot of activities there. Let's get another 15 seconds or so for people to kind of think more deeply about, like, these are the 3 buckets of strategies. One involving the street infrastructure, right? One is about providing more transit improvements, right? Not only the transit service, but also the affordability of transit, and being able to get around freely in San Jose. And then the last bucket is really about providing more policies, right, and programs to really fund these strategies and bringing in more programs such as like electric vehicles, car shares, etc., to the city. All right, let's see what we are thinking here. Great, we have 44% of the comments saying we need to prioritize transit. That is great. We also have 30% or 32% of us saying we need to have more policies and programs to really maximize the incentives, so that, like, not only the street infrastructure, but really wanting to provide more incentives, more awareness, more marketing, so that people know when you know how, when and how, right, to get around in the city. And we also have 24% saying that we need better streets, safer streets, right? You know, getting on transit is good, but once you get off the buses and light rail, you still need to walk to and from your destination. How can we provide a facility so that you can feel safe walking and biking around San Jose? That's a very good comments there. Great, thank you so much for your very deep thinking and participation. And with that, I will pass it on to Joe to talk about an example that we can show you tonight for understanding what are the needs for any of some specific neighborhoods in the city.
Great, thanks, Olson. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. I see some thumbs up. Great. Yeah, so as Wilson said, we're going to have a conversation about the district needs assessment that were conducted as a part of the Move San Jose plan, as well as kind of documenting this new analytical tool that was developed to kind of help inform the DOT strategy. Next slide, please. So to just start here, we have a map showing the city of San Jose with its 10 city council districts outlined here on the right. And then also in purple, you can see where we have our EPCs or equity priority communities in San Jose. These are neighborhoods that have been and that we recognize as having some of the greatest concentration of transportation related needs within the city. These areas are defined by a methodology used by the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. EPCs here are defined by certain demographic and socioeconomic metrics, like the percent of population in a census tract that is considered to be low income, or the percentage of a population in a tract that are people of color. Other metrics are used, like the amount of people living with a disability, people with limited English proficiency, and zero vehicle households, among others. So given these circumstances, we have found that our resources may go further to address longstanding issues, in addition to providing relief for some of our most vulnerable residents. These next slides will show how we came to conclusions through our new methodology and framework to help prioritize our limited time, resources, and funding to have the greatest impact to our Move San Jose goals and for our community. Next slide, please. So as part of the Move San Jose effort, we conducted a needs assessment of each district in San Jose to identify the greatest mobility and accessibility needs and prioritize neighborhood-specific strategies that were evaluated in this plan. We all know San Jose is a pretty expansive city with a variety of needs depending on where the city you live, work, and plan. We started by identifying what made each city council district unique. What are the characteristics of its population? What are the major destination centers there? What are the existing transportation services available there? To identify the range and diversity of needs, we conducted this assessment for each city council district in San Jose to assess how the district is performing across our Move San Jose goals. Each goal area has a set of metrics that were grouped together to estimate a single score for each goal. We also compared the performance of each metric between the district as a whole and for the equity priority communities that are within that district to identify any disparities in metric performance. Once we identify the greatest needs within the district, we compared these needs to what is currently planned in that area. Are there lots of bike projects there from the bike plan that are planned? What transit improvements is VTA considering, and where are the gaps based on what we've identified the needs are and what's currently planned? And then we also leveraged a lot of the outreach that we did during this planning effort to identify what people in each district were identifying as what their important needs are. Where do we feel unsafe, or where is it inconvenient to get anywhere without a car? What strategies that were evaluated within this plan should we focus on to help them have more options? We combine this data-driven analysis of goal performance with the community outreach to identify the final set of recommended strategies for what we should start considering and prioritizing with this new methodology and framework. Next slide, please. So let's go ahead and dive in. I'm going to walk through an example of a needs assessment and recommendations for District 3 based on District 3's greatest transportation needs as represented by their Move San Jose goal performance. This helps the DOT to prioritize its limited time, resources, and funding for projects and really prioritize those that have the greatest impact to improving the Move San Jose goal performance in that district. Next slide, please. So for this needs assessment, we started by identifying, what's the human fabric of District 3 and what does that look like? What are their demographics and socioeconomic characteristics that could be impacting their transportation options? We use our community equity indicators to quantify these and compare them to a citywide average. You can see here that District 3 is one of the most diverse districts in San Jose, with 79% of its population designated as people of color. It is almost double the rent burden and double the amount of people that are considered low income compared to San Jose as a whole. And also, interestingly enough, it has a higher proportion of zero vehicle households than anywhere else in the city. Next slide, please. So now that we have a better sense of who is living in District 3, we can use our new methodology and tools to quantify how District 3 is performing across our Move San Jose goal areas. Each goal area has its own set of metrics that our decision support system analyzes. We combine these metrics for each goal to produce a single goal score for District 3. A perfect score is out of 10 where we want to be, but we also compare it to a citywide average to see how it performs for each goal compared to the city. You can see here that compared to the citywide average, District 3 does better than the citywide average for goal areas like 20-minute neighborhoods, connected neighborhoods, and move the economy. And this is because District 3 is located in downtown San Jose with lots of existing transit options and a high concentration of jobs and residents. We can also see here that District 3's lowest performing scores are for enjoyable transportation, transportation safety, and less driving. Next slide, please. So although none of the scores in District 3 are a perfect 10, we focus on these lowest 3 scores to identify what we need to prioritize or to plan for to improve these goal areas. Next slide, please. So here on the left, we have a table that shows all of the 9 Move San Jose goal scores for District 3. We also have the goal scores for the equity priority communities that are within District 3, and then the citywide average. You can see here at the bottom of the table that enjoyable transportation and less driving have the lowest scores across our 9 Move San Jose goals. Based on our metrics associated with each goal, we identified that enjoyable transportation is scoring low here because there's poor transit speed and transit reliability in District 3. Less driving also needs improvement because the metric we use for commute mode share is far from our established 2040 goals, which needs improvement. And for transportation safety, the lowest score is most attributed to a high bike stress in District 3. This has been validated through our outreach. Here you can see a quote that shows that D3 residents are interested in ways to make the streets safer, potentially by decreasing the speed limit or implementing other changes so that people can walk and bike more safely. Next slide, please. So we are going to dive into this analysis for transportation safety a bit more to investigate what is causing this goal area to underperform for District 3. So one of the metrics that is used to score transportation safety is level of bike stress. This is a measure of how safe people feel while biking and includes parameters like what the roadway speed is and what level of protection the existing bike infrastructure has. The map on the right shows that District 3 has relatively high bike stress values throughout, meaning that people will not feel as safe biking here as other places in the city. Bike stress in District 3 is particularly bad on the western side near the airport and Diridon Station. Because bike stress is high in District 3, the transportation safety goal area performs poorly here. Other metrics that are used to calculate transportation safety are the number of severe fatal crashes by mode, pedestrian stress, transit stress, and the number of crashes on our Vision Zero corridors. This data analysis was supported by the outreach that we heard throughout this plan. Our user persona, Kyle here, has stated that he feels like he risks his life every day choosing to not take a car, and that he's particularly interested in traffic slowing strategies to make him feel safer while biking on Market and Santa Clara streets. Based on these findings, we can begin to consider the types of strategies that were evaluated within this plan that will help improve the transportation safety scores in District 3. For example, strategies like building more low-stress bike facilities and prioritizing more actions related to safer streets. Next slide, please. So with this new tool and framework, we can also layer in a lot of additional information that is helpful in informing these recommendations. Here's an example showing the map we just looked at in District 3 on the left, level of bike stress, and a new map on the right, which shows the number of jobs accessible within 30 minutes of a bike ride. So the areas in District 3 that have the highest jobs accessibility by bike also have the highest bike stress scores. Although many destinations can be reached within a short bike trip, many won't feel safe doing so with our existing transportation infrastructure. We can use our new tool and methodology to identify gaps in these metrics and recommend strategies to improve these goal area scores. And later I'll talk about how we can leverage this new methodology to estimate the impact the strategies have on our metrics and their related goals. Next slide, please. So for each goal area, we've identified the set of Move San Jose strategies that will improve the score for that goal. For transportation safety highlighted here, we can improve this score by building better transit stops, enhancing bike connectivity, filling gaps in trails and sidewalks, doing things like improving lighting, building safer streets, and having more low-stress bike facilities. Next slide, please. So we have identified a set of strategies using our new tools and framework that will help improve the transportation safety, enjoyable transportation, and less driving goal areas in District 3. We've also heard through our outreach and engagement what types of strategies D3 residents need and where they should be implemented. For example, from our focus groups, we heard that protected bike infrastructure and flexible transportation options were important for D3 residents. We combined these and identified where there is overlap between outreach and our data-driven analysis to help inform our final recommendation for this district. Although D3 needs improvement on all goal areas, these are good places to start given our limited time, resources, and funding to achieve our Move San Jose goals. Next slide, please. So to evaluate our new tool and methodology, we pulled together a series of potential futures to see how the tool responded to transportation changes and to give us a sense of how far away from our goals we are, even after implementing these project strategies and programs. These potential futures include things like, what would San Jose look like if we build out all planned bike projects? Or what if we built out all planned transit improvements? We estimate the outcomes of these potential futures on our metrics and the goal scores and evaluated how much we can shift travel behavior to more sustainable modes. Next slide, please. So the first potential future we used to test our new tool and framework was including every bike project that was part of the Better Bike Plan 2020. With our new tool and framework, we can estimate the changes in metrics that are impacted by building out all these bike projects. For example, availability of options by area, complete streets, services and amenities that are within a 20-minute bike ride, travel time between neighborhoods by non-auto modes, bike mode share, and vehicle miles traveled are all improved with these projects. This would improve Move San Jose goals of less driving, connected neighborhoods, clean the air, transportation safety, and others. Next slide, please. Another potential future we evaluated was, what if we build out all planned transit improvements in San Jose? This includes things like the completion of the Santa Clara BART extension, Caltrain electrification, light rail and bus line extensions, and improved service frequency. We found that under this scenario, we improve metrics like transit travel time competitiveness, transit speeds, transit stress, travel times between neighborhoods by transit, and jobs accessibility within a 30-minute transit trip. This improves less driving, enjoyable transportation, connected neighborhoods, and clean the air goal areas. Next slide, please. So the third potential future we evaluated was evaluating an equity-centered future wherein we prioritize planned projects for equity priority communities. This includes building out a complete sidewalk network for our equity priority communities, adding in more pedestrian crossings and footbridges to better connect equity priority communities, and introducing things like microtransit and additional bike share stations to help alleviate the transportation disparities that exist for these communities. With this potential future, metrics like cost of transportation as a percentage of household income, bike, ped, and transit stress, accessibility to jobs, goods, and services, auto mode split, and vehicle miles traveled are all improved. Next slide, please. And the final potential future we evaluated was, what if we add in more programs and policies on top of this? This includes things like the transit first policy, introducing smart parking policies, means-based transit fares, things like encouraging electric vehicles, encouraging and allowing car share, among others. We found these to improve metrics like transit speed, transit stress, accessibility to jobs, goods, and services, and particularly here for reducing VMT and greenhouse gas emissions. Next slide, please. Oh, I think, next slide. There we go. So although these potential futures make progress towards our goals, there's still a lot to be done. With our new tools and methodologies, we've created a process that we have in place now that helps us move in the direction that we need to be going in and allows us to prioritize our limited time, resources, and funding to make the most impactful changes to our community. There's only so much we have control over, however. To meet our goal, we will need more supportive land use in San Jose, a better plan for electrification, more state and federal action to provide the policies and funding we need to make these changes, and a cultural shift for people, for how people in San Jose get around.
So this won't be easy, but we have the tools and the strategy now to help us make meaningful progress towards these goals. For more information on this new tool and our framework and methodology, I encourage you all to visit the Move San Jose webpage on the city's DOT site. And with that, I'll hand it over to Natasha.
So I know that the chat has been really active with a bunch of questions. I love how engaged everyone is. And I thank people who are being very critical and asking some really hard-hitting questions. I'm not sure how we want to start this, but Ramses is going to be fielding most of them. I can't see like who has their hand up or anything like that in my view, unfortunately. So
Corinne and Avery will help us with that. So yeah, if you have any questions you'd like to ask us, please do raise your hand. You can raise your hand down on the bottom. Further questions can be asked in the chat. And also I just posted a small URL, bit.ly/move San Jose. That's where the actual plan is. And we definitely want as many people as possible to read as much of the plan as possible and give us feedback there. It's broken up into sections with some survey questions around it there. So we'd love you guys to go there. We have the first question here from Gregory Smith. The ACE commuter shuttle was free at one point, right? That is not a program that I can actually speak to. I don't know if
I can speak to that, Ramses.
That's right, you can, yeah.
This is Corinne. I do some work with ACE in addition to the city of San Jose. And yes, the ACE shuttle is a shuttle that is timed to the ACE trains that come in from Stockton through Great America Station next to Levi Stadium in Santa Clara, and then to Diridon, San Jose. And they do have some timed shuttles to their trains that people can get on if they disembark at Great America Station. So that is the answer to that one. And we do have some raised hands. Ramses, would you like me to call on folks for you, or?
Yeah, that'd be great if you could do that.
Okay, great. Omar Vasquez, you are our first. I'm going to just ask you to unmute if you want to ask your question.
Yeah, my question, right when we start the presentation, I think it was Ryan, the name of the person says that he take the bus and then bike to the last mile. So, but there's a lot of people who cannot use a bicycle, or sometimes the weather is like too cold, too early, rainy, or too hot. What is the strategy, or what is the plan to cover the last mile if somebody wants to take like public transportation or not drive?
Yeah, great question, Omar. So last mile is one of the biggest problems in kind of making transit work, right? Because a car, we can kind of go from our driveway to the parking lot of wherever we're going. So the city is, through this plan and many other plans that and efforts it's involved in, working to develop as many different options in last mile. That's everything from looking at developing community-based shuttles to the scooter program that a lot of folks have mentioned already. We have a bike share program, and also just making the sidewalks easier for folks who can't bike to use. Making sure that all of our curb cuts are there, making sure that our infrastructure is maintained well is another one. So it's about creating options, right? And trying to catch as many different parts of the transportation market or different types of behaviors that folks are willing to engage in. And so the more we can create different options, the more folks will be able to use them.
Great. Our next question is from Christopher Cook. Christopher, I hope you're able to unmute yourself.
I am. Thank you very much. It's actually two questions. One, does the Department, this is as a resident, does the Department of Transportation have sort of a neighborhood guideline for neighbors that want to change things on their street, such as, turning a four-way intersection into a traffic circle, or being able to mitigate that so then cars aren't rushing through intersections? One thing as a designer, because I am a civil engineer, is that I run into is that most anything has to be designed and it takes forever in order to get through the city. So I would love it if there's a way to just say, if you have a certain distance between curbs from, opposite curb to opposite curb, that if you meet those guidelines, that we can implement this in the next, improvement cycle for this intersection? Is there a way that that can be sort of a, rubber stamp essentially for each intersection? Is that something that can be done?
So design policy is very important to making, addressing things like speeding and safety and all of these things. We've recently adopted a complete streets standards and guidelines that does help us address issues at that larger level. And the balance of how much resources there are in bringing about different improvements, right, becomes kind of the driving force here, right? So we have policies that are working towards bringing down what we call design speeds on streets as much as possible, so that drivers don't kind of just feel comfortable driving at higher speeds on roads. And as we do the pavement program, we're repaving all of the streets in San Jose through Measure T that was passed a couple of years ago. And through that program, we're doing as much as we possibly can in terms of redesign of roads to do the kinds of things you're talking about. So I'd say one, in safety design, rubber stamping in general is a little scary, right? Because every situation is a little bit different. But we overall have the city policies and the design policies within the city are driving towards what you're talking about. It is a matter of, a traffic circle costs actually a lot of money to install, right? And so we can install 3 of those, or we can do, 30 something else, right? And so there's a lot of kind of making those balanced questions off. So I know that's not a direct answer to your question, but I hope it gives you a little sense of kind of how we think about it and how we're approaching it. And you said you had a second part to your question.
He's muted again. While I go find him, let me ask Buki Wilson to ask their question.
Hey, I was at the Vision Zero meeting just last year at the end of the year, and I was dismayed to find out that our death numbers were high. And I'm following San Jose PD's Twitter. I noticed that they're up to 9 deaths on the streets of San Jose. And I'm wondering what is the plan to curtail these deaths and these high numbers that we've been seeing in the last couple of years?
Yeah, one of the core questions that we ask ourselves in DOT. One, the Vision Zero plan itself is our kind of, I would say, focused plan on trying to address issues as we can there. So that's the action plan that's meant to drive that. How this plan comes into play in that conversation. What we're using this plan, right, as it's the kind of umbrella plan or the large strategy for the department. And what this plan helps to do is drive more resources towards addressing those kinds of issues, right? We know that safety is a primary driver for folks to not drive their cars around and get out and do things that are more environmentally and friendly and all that. So there's a lot of motivation to get those done from that perspective. But the core motivation is people should not be taking their lives into their own hands when they're traveling around, right? And so I will say council did support taking all excess funds that are in the transportation area and put those towards safety projects. And the planning team along with the safety team work together to figure out exactly where the best use of resources is to add things like shorter crossings, protection for bikeways where we can, in as many places as we can in that. So it's a 180 square mile city. And so there's a lot of things we need to do. But we very much see that as a kind of primary focus for us. And we're putting as many resources as we can and driving the overall direction of work, as well as things like our design policies and stuff like that to specifically address severe injury and deaths that are happening on our roadway.
Ramses, did you want to briefly mention the traffic calming toolkit in this context?
In terms of, where are you going with that?
I don't know. Jessica mentioned it, that she'd like it mentioned. Or I could ask Jessica to mention it.
Jessica, you wanna say what you're thinking?
Hold on, let me pull her up.
Jessica Zink is our deputy director over the planning group.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for letting me lurk mostly and then opine here. The previous caller asked a good question that Ramses responded to really well with the complete streets standards and guidelines. We also have a traffic calming toolkit, which is another thing that I think the caller, the question might find helpful, because it is more tailored to residential neighborhoods and the treatments that are appropriate there, and kind of how we think about which treatments are appropriate where. So that might be a helpful resource as well. Thanks for letting me interject.
Thank you, Jessica.
Okay, we have Christopher back for the second part of his question. Thanks for raising your hand again, Christopher, and making it easy for us.
No worries. This actually comes as a developer's rep. As I said, I'm a civil engineer, and something that came up recently on a fully county funded low-income housing project was the city basically wanted to take more sidewalk than was actually proposed even originally, than that's actually even out there currently right now. And it wasn't until very late in the game that they came back and said, we want more sidewalk, even though just after the project, which is 50 feet later, there's another 4-foot narrow sidewalk. So it goes from 12 feet back down to 4 at an intersection. So, and what was frustrating for us was there was nothing that said that it was a requirement. There was nothing that the DOT said until very late in the game that they wanted it. And ultimately, it was just really frustrating to then have to go and redesign a building, redo all of those things. Is there a way that that can be more presented to public works in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's outside the scope of this plan, but I'll speak briefly to your point. We do have sidewalk requirements. They're in the complete streets standards and guidelines, as well as whatever area plan may be adopted for the area. And so apologize that that wasn't communicated to you. And it's something we can, the details of the situation are beyond kind of what we should really be addressing here, but definitely hear the complaint. Overall, we are pushing for wider sidewalks in lots of parts of the city because we know that is a primary safety issue for many, many parts of the city.
Thank you.
Great. Next, we have Ryan Globus.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I was wondering, as part of this, is the city partnering with the school districts and the various schools? Because I think I didn't really see it much in the presentation, but I think focusing on students, in addition to everything else you're focusing on, could be really helpful. You know, a lot of them can't drive, you know, they could be more independent if it were safe for them to walk or bike or take transit, or, you know, if there is a convenient bus line to get them to school. And, you know, get them in the habit early while they're young. And in Palo Alto, you would see, like, going to the high schools in the morning, these like giant mobs of like high school kids on bikes. And it was really cool to see. And it'd be great to see that in San Jose.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. Yeah, we do partner with schools. We have a walk and roll program that goes to schools and does things like educate kids about biking, about safe travel, and the like. And you know, of course, we do also go for safe routes to school grants when those are available. So we definitely agree. I mean, I think you're pointing out a lot of the benefits. One, just getting kids to school is a big burden on parents and trying to get them safe ways to get there. And two, when folks are comfortable doing these things young, it makes them more likely to do them when they're old and advocate for them. So definitely agree with that. And the city does partner with schools on a lot of these issues. So thank you.
Okay, it is 6:45. Do we need to move on, Ramses?
No, I mean, only have kind of a drawing. Are we over at 7? Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. So we have a quick next steps and then a drawing at the end. So I'd prefer to spend as much time answering questions as we can.
Okay, wonderful.
I don't see any more hands up. Can you help me post what's going on in the chat?
Yes, we have so many great comments of the thoughts you're sharing in detail. If you had a really learning, you might want to copy and paste it in again so we see it. But let's see here.
Let's see, just getting through. I see one from Alan Williams here, kind of, asking a question about, who gets more benefit, or how do more people get benefit from biking versus transit? And I'll say we don't see them as conflictual, right? We're trying to improve both. And sometimes we make strategic decisions around, hey, Santa Clara Street is really going to be the focus of bus traffic, and San Fernando will be the focus of bike traffic, and we really make those environments as beneficial to those modes, and hopefully get a benefit to both. And so we're trying to do our best to make sure that all of these modes can grow as best we can.
Great. And thank you for that, Ramses. I have a couple more hands up. So I'd like to invite Tony Romero.
Hi. Just have a quick question or general question about funding. Considering funding from like the federal and state, considering the infrastructure bill passed, California has overflow. If you get money from federal or state, who kind of makes the last decision in terms of whether it's building infrastructure or having funds for services? I'm just wondering who makes the last decisions when it comes to those state and federal fundings.
Yeah, it's a pretty complicated picture because there are many grant programs that bring money down to the transportation system from the federal and state levels. Some of them support very particular things. They'll only support what we call active transportation, so buses or bikes and walking kinds of things. Other ones are specifically for, there's lots of electric bus grants coming out right now, EV charging grants. And so the programs get set up by legislators. There was just a reauthorization, for example, of the Federal Transportation Act. And so there are programs that get set up by legislators to address specific needs and specific areas within transportation. There's everything from there's a huge fund to help us build bridges or rebuild bridges, because there's a lot of bridge issues across the country. And so the decisions get made at the legislative level in terms of the intent of the money. And then the agencies that implement that intent, like the federal DOT, Federal Department of Transportation, sometimes Department of Energy, kind of depending on where it ended up going, then kind of administer that, and they'll make lots of program rules around, who exactly is eligible for that, and what requirements around equity and payoff and all that kind of stuff get put in there. We could do a few days on kind of understanding that, but I hope that helps a little bit in terms of doing that. So advocacy for funding and transportation, talking to legislators as programs are being set up or as bills are being set up is very important. And then getting really talking to organizations like VTA or MTC at the regional level, on Metropolitan Transportation Commission, who then bring that money to the Bay Area to implement programs.
Great. Thanks, Ramses. We have another question from Stephen Veer.
So my question relates to the traffic calming toolkit that you shared out. I've obviously not been able to look through the whole thing in the short time since you shared it, but I was looking through the beginning, and one paragraph early on kind of drew my attention, where it talks about how the implementation of comprehensive traffic calming projects is limited only to residential, 2-lane, and local neighborhood collector streets, as opposed to other streets in addition. It seems like the justification for that is that some of these other roadways are intended to carry higher volumes of traffic. And I'm thinking is that there's a lot of roads that could have potentially high pedestrian deaths, or that could be in need of traffic calming measures such as Santa Clara Avenue, things like that. And this kind of essentially keeps those completely from being able to have changes made to them, kind of the assumption that their goal is to carry high volumes of traffic and at speed. Whereas I think that baseline assumption might not be correct, and that there should be higher priority on safety, as well as what's the purpose of this street? Is it to just shuttle people through downtown, or to help build the wealth in that area? And I think thinking of those large streets as just a way to shuttle cars through kind of is a disservice to the areas around them. And so my question is kind of, how does the city go about changing streets like those? Is it just not possible to do so, or is it a completely different process?
Yeah, so thank you very much for that question. So the traffic calming toolkit only applies to those smaller streets. We most certainly don't think that the larger streets are kind of just places for cars. It's definitely not policy-wise or our approach to those things. Those other roadways have other ways of addressing design and improvement, right? And so because they're used by both the communities around them as well as the larger populace more. The biggest programs that we're implementing and working on those designs is through our greatly expanded pavement program. As pavement programs come up, we look carefully at all of the major arterials and all of the roads that the pavement program is working on, and we do our best to bring the resources at hand at that time to do everything from adding protected bikeways to bringing bulb outs, or at least where we can't afford more, shrinking lanes and things like that to make things more focused on safety and bringing down design speeds for cars. So we do not base the base assumption in DOT is not, oh, these streets are just for pumping cars through, for example, but we are most certainly focused at a larger perspective on making all roads, all streets, complete streets, meaning that they are inviting and safe for all users. Most certainly will take a good amount of time to get there, but we're not only looking at those smaller streets like you're talking about in the toolkit. The toolkit is kind of comes from an assumption of addressing smaller streets. I hope that helps.
Thanks, Ramses. I think we have just like 2 more minutes. And I just want to note that there's a few comments and questions in the chat about how BART affects all this when it comes in. And we really only have about 2 minutes, but if you or Adam wanted to speak to that at all, just wanted to open that space up.
Does BART affect planning? BART is adding to planning. I mean, they're bringing a huge new project, or literally VTA is building it, and BART will run it. And so there's a lot of work going around between VTA and the city to make sure that the areas around the stations and that will be brought in by the new BART expansion are integrated into the multimodal transportation system as best they can. So there's really great cooperation between the two institutions to bring as much thought and resources as we can to make sure that folks wanting to get to those stations by bike, by walking, or by car are able to do so in an inviting and safe fashion. So does BART do planning for us? They do add some knowledge. They have some great folks who work with us to help think through some of these issues. So in that way they do. But the planning is kind of technically done by VTA and the city around them. Adam, you want to add anything? Great. All right, so we are at 5 minutes left, and we want to thank just the amount of folks who have showed up and how much energy folks have been putting into their questions and the chat. It's always so great to see folks engaged in these big questions and wanting to wanting to engage. So just thank you so much for all the energy and thought and critical thinking that has come about. Again, we'll be saving the chat. We find that to be such a gold mine of folks' thoughts. So thanks so much. Let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, so reminder, the plan itself, we merely kind of touched on the overview of what our plan is, and we only touched on one district. So every district in the city, council district, when we say district, that's what we mean, has gotten an analysis like the one Joe walked through earlier. And so we really would love folks to look at all of the districts. If you live in one, please dive in, check it out, and check out other parts of the plan and give us feedback on the surveys that are part of the website there. And again, there is the website URL there. And again, we've put the link in the chat a few times. Thank you, Joe. There it is again. We are also we will be doing community-based presentations. So if you're part of a neighborhood group or other gathering and would like to engage with the team as we live out this last round of engagement on this, please do reach out to us. We also have a Twitter channel and Facebook where we post a lot of information about this. I will also say this year is a really big year for DOT in terms of planning and thinking about the future of the transportation system. This is one of the major plans coming forward this year. The downtown transportation plan is also in a similar state. Wilson here is the project manager for that, along with Eric Eidlin, and that plan is out for review as well. We also have an emerging mobility plan that's close to being cooked, as well as some other work coming on around parking policy. And you heard about the transit first policy as well. And so this is a really big year for those who are engaged in thinking about transportation and thinking about the future of San Jose. And I think we have a lot of folks on this session here who are on that. So please do keep an eye out on that on the Twitter and Facebook and you'll be seeing more opportunities to get engaged